Welcome back. You're watching CheckPoint. Now, we want to focus our CheckPoint discussion this Sunday night on our institutions of higher learning, just coming against the backdrop of what happened in the county of Uasin Gishu this past weekend, where there was an altercation between local leaders and the Education Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, over the appointment of a vice-chancellor in an acting capacity. They were saying that Dr. Fred Matiang'i did not do the right thing by not appointing Professor Isaac Koskei and appointing Professor Laban Ayiro, saying that he did not come from that region. That elicited a lot of reaction, a lot of Kenyans talking, especially on social media, and we want to focus on that issue, just how ethnicized are public universities in this country and what goes into the process of appointing a vice-chancellor in a public university. And joining me here on the show tonight are two professors, Professor Gitile Naitule, Commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC. We also have with us Professor Macharia Munene, lecturer at the United States International University here in Nairobi, who was also a lecturer at the University of Nairobi for a period of 10 years. Let me start with you, Professor Naitule. The moment a nation begins to regard the tribe of a nation, tribe of a person who runs a public institution of higher learning, we are getting into a lot of trouble, aren't we?
Yes, we are, because the universities, by their very nature, are supposed to be drivers of diversity. And when we talk about national cohesion and integration, the universities are supposed to lean in that direction. So once we reduce them into a tribe of evendoms, then we basically don't know where to start, actually. Frankly, it becomes a very sad state of affairs.
Prof. Macharia, how deeply rooted is this problem in our public universities?
Well, it is deep, and it is not new. What has happened is that it just exploded, but the simmering has been going on for some time. It is very unfortunate, actually very sad, to see political leaders, especially political leaders, propagating decadence, intellectual decadence. Because what we have here are people saying they are not interested in the quality of the institution as long as they put somebody they like in that particular position. The key question that maybe they should be asking is whether the person who was appointed in that acting capacity is fit to be in that position,
right?
Not where he comes from, and whether he'll be able to deliver on his mandate, and maybe the criteria that may have been used in reaching at the decision to appoint a particular person.
But even before you get to that, should politicians be involved in the recruitment of leadership in universities in the first place?
We have a constitution that talks about public participation. So if they claim that they are participating as public, there's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong is for them to insist that they must have their way in such matter. And that should not be allowed at all, because it is a license to self-destruction. In fact, you lose the purpose of a university when that becomes the main consideration as to whether politicians in a particular place are happy with a particular appointee. If they do have serious reservations, they should express them. But there are better ways of expressing reservations than storming into a building and trying to embarrass or kick out somebody who is legitimately in that position.
Professor Naitule, is there a place for politicians in the appointment or recruitment of staff in public universities, especially vice-chancellors?
I would say there is zero place for the politicians, even though the law is talking about public participation. That is not what the law would have in mind. The law would think maybe our students would participate. I would have no problem with that. Maybe the lecturers should participate on how we recruit the people who govern them. I have no problem with that. But the politicians, when they start interfering with how university managers are recruited, then they will also hire doctors for us, you know. And to me, that is the path to self-destruction. So, and also you can see the immaturity of the politicians we are discussing here, because when you have a problem with a certain appointment, the place to go is the court of law to challenge that. It's not to storm into an institution. Now, a leader who reduces himself to organizing a mob and a storm into an institution, it shows that he doesn't even know the minimum requirement, the minimum legal requirements which regulate our behavior. You know, just those very basic minimum. Because what you expect from a governor, from a member of parliament, is absolute and total fidelity to the law. That's what you would expect. So you would expect this fellow to go to court, challenge the procedure which was used, recruitment, challenge the qualification of whoever it is they don't want for acting capacity, but they were brazen. They just even indicated which particular person they would prefer. So I don't think there's a role for politicians in appointing university managers.
All right. Prof, generally, when universities are advertising for the job of vice chancellor, and more universities did do that in March this year, what are some of the qualities and values that they're looking at?
Ideally, it should be somebody who commands respect, somebody who has common sense in terms of concept and application. It should be somebody who has competence in the management of the operations of institution of higher education. It should not be somebody who is totally ignorant of what a university is, but somebody who has vision and examine to find out what would this person deliver, or what would he do to raise the profile of the university to a very significant level, in case the university is down there.
Right.
Because that's something that people look at. And it should be also people who have scholarly ability. Because if you are running a university and you cannot write a paragraph properly, then there's a problem. Because you ask professors to write or lecturers to do something,
All right.
and you have a problem yourself. So they look at all those things.
All right.
But most important is common sense, credibility, and respect.
And how fair is that process?
It
In
varies.
most cases.
There are some places where they have appointed very good vice chancellors. It's not a blanket thing. So in general, on the average, it's 50-50. There are some places where the appointment of particular administrators is questionable. And that may explain why some of our universities are having problems, because the people appointed may be questionable.
All right. Now, Professor Naitule, when this happened in the county of Uasin Gishu, we did look at other universities across the country, especially in the regions, and we found that a good number of them have leaders from the locality, not leaders, vice chancellors coming from those particular regions. Why is there, so that it means that problem goes deeper than just a politician. So why is there a tendency by locals to impose leaders on these universities wherever they are situated?
Yeah, I think this is, do I call it oversight or failure, in my opinion, of taking the role of the university serious in society from the appointing authorities. Because this is how first it started. It started by setting up certain universities to belong to certain ethnic groups. So if you try to check out, you will find some universities for that years or so, they are only being managed by a particular ethnic community. So when it started like that, and then the opening for constituency colleges started coming in, then the local leaders, the local political leaders, started lobbying now for their own people to handle the institutions in their regions. So it continued like that until now what we find ourselves actually having what you can quote and quote call village universities. Now, you say the most is actually all of them. because if you try to find the ones not ended by the villagers, these are really very few. But you see, this was a lack of understanding of what a university is supposed to do. First, the university, first and foremost, is supposed to create a citizen who is a Kenyan. And to do that, then the university management as a whole need to reflect the image of Kenya. And they need to reflect that to who? To the students who enter that university. The first thing they need to see is Kenya is represented here. So when our students go to a university, and then what they find, they don't find themselves into it, then they are questioning themselves whether they are in a university or in some high school, or glorified high school as it were, within that localized place. So things started going wrong a little bit in 1990s in some universities by replacing, when a vice chancellor finishes his term, then they look for a vice chancellor from the same ethnic group to replace. But now this was the reason for that. Right. It wasn't just what was happening is corruption entered the university system.
All right.
And the corruption creates roots and networks. To protect that networks, you need an agreeable person to replace an outgoing vice chancellor. That's how some universities simply became ethnicized. They belong to ethnic communities. I mean, the Moi we are trying to talk about here, have tried to think the last time then there was a vice chancellor who wasn't from that ethnic community, you know. So this is the problem, but I think it's a problem right now that the minister is trying to handle. If you see the problem coming from the politicians, it's because the minister is actually getting a handle in solving that problem, and people resist because the benefits, there are benefits that will disappear if the university was strictly about research and knowledge creation, because that's what they're supposed to do. Right. Then nobody will be complaining who is about to be.
So the benefits that Prof is talking about, those are talking about corruption, maybe cartels in running the institutions, maybe supplying or whatever it may be. Is that still happening today? Because you said that is where the problem began. Is that maybe still happening today in public universities?
Well, there is corruption in public universities. Let me say, there's corruption almost everywhere. Right. And, before 1990s, or before 2000 actually, it was the president who was appointing vice chancellors. The criteria for appointing them, he knew best, with maybe the minister. In fact, most of the people, deputy vice chancellor, and even principals, and by then the universities were just a few. So and that's when the president was the chancellor of all the universities. Yes. With that change, then you have the increase of the number of universities, and the localization now started taking place. Some people saying this is ours. I do know that at Moi University, even back in the 1980s, there was that feeling that this university belongs to the people here, and not, there's that little village town called Wakesas. If you are told, we made clear that you cannot settle here, even if you wanted to. So what has happened now is this thing has sprouted, and with the increasing almost a university almost everywhere, then the local people, the politicians in particular, because what we saw, politicians have lobbied for universities to be established in their places. Right. And they have succeeded. So once they succeeded in lobbying for a university to be put in their place, then they feel they have a stake in who becomes the manager. The problem with that is that some of the managers have not been the best people. I do not think there is anything wrong, per se, with somebody who knows the terrain in a particular place, heading the institution. The quality of the person is the issue. And whether this person has the broad vision of the country, or trying to turn the university into a village polytechnic with a university name. That has been the problem. So you go into a place, as the prof is saying, and you look at the whole structure, you get lost. Is this a university or a glorified high school? And sometimes you go in other places, you find exclusion. People deliberately being excluded from the management of the institution, whereas some others are deliberately included even when they have no clue as to what they are doing. Now, when that happens, the university starts going down the tube because the essence of the university is being ignored. And the essence of the university is to generate knowledge, to distribute, to share, to be innovative, to come up with better things.
All right.
And also, now the distribution, the sharing of that knowledge is through the teaching and research. When that is not being done, and today we should admit, very little research is being done in Kenya.
In universities?
In the universities, yes.
Prof, the issue of devolution, it came with the new constitution, the 2010 constitution. It is still being implemented. Is it making residents, Kenyans, leaders, elected leaders as well, confused about what the role of devolution is in as far as, you know, the universities, which are national assets, are concerned? Maybe thinking that this is ours, this should be devolved as well to some point.
I think it's confusing them, yes, because I think some of them, some of these new managers we elected, they're even thinking that they are running independent states to the exclusion of other Kenyans. You see, there are rules which came with the devolution to strengthen our unity as a people. For example, the employment within a county was not supposed to, the locals, the majority of the people in that county, they were supposed to get 70% of whatever employment opportunities are available there. And that percent was supposed to come from external, from the people without that county. The idea was to maintain the unity of Kenyans. That has been almost completely ignored by nearly all of them, because we have been doing research in those areas, and we have the fact, we have the data. They've been almost thoroughly ignored. Now, there is also another rule here, which also is now being challenged by the likes of the governor of Uasin Gishu. The rule that all national institutions, because these are national assets, supported by the Kenyan taxpayers without discrimination as a whole, they cannot have more than 15% of one ethnic community working in those institutions. Again, that is coming under attack as a result of this devolution. So there's a confusion within the devolution, because also we seem to have gone into it full speed, which I think should not have happened. I believe that when we set out into this route, this is a good route, it's involved resources, but the managers of counties, the governors, should not have been elected by those counties in the first 5 elections, meaning 25 years, so that we can mature into being Kenyan and running in devolution. This is what I feel should have happened. The governor should have been recruited by the Public Service Commission, appointed by the president, and then confirmed by parliament, so that you don't have, so that they can, you can have, say, for example, if you take the county of Meru, the county of Meru can have one governor coming from the coast or coming from Nyanza. Now, even the corruption that we seem to have devolved would have been less, because the people would check that in governor seriously. Now, they can't check their governors on corruption, because he surrounds himself now with his clan. And when he is surrounded with his clan, he has now a fortress to defend his corruption. So it becomes even difficult to monitor these governors as it's. So devolution is a challenge, and I think we need leadership in changing some of the devolution proposals which are not working, because we can clearly see which ones are not working.
All right. We have talked a lot about the root causes of this problem that we have in public universities. Let's switch our attention to what can be done to avert this, or to change the situation that as is currently on the ground. Let's start with like what happened last week. How would you classify that, the utterances by, you know, elected leaders storming a public university 2 days before graduation ceremony and saying that this will not go ahead unless one of our own is the vice chancellor? How isn't that hate speech and incitement?
I think for me, as a commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration, that is outright breach of law. In fact, that is even incitement under Section 95 of the Penal Code. let alone the sections of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. So what we have done is we have sent investigators to Washington Gisho, because if you are going to present a case, you need to investigate it, you need to compare, you need to get all those statements, because the judge is not listening to the TV and so on. So once that report comes to us, we will set it down, we will analyze the evidence. We are convinced as a commission that the law has been broken. We will forward it to the Director of Public Prosecution, who will make a determination whether there is enough evidence to proceed with the case. Because what we feel that that was outright incitement and it was dangerous. It was dangerous because other people couldn't copy that.
Right. Could it be that NCIC and other government agencies that are mandated with checking issues of incitement and hate speech are the problem?
Well, they could only be the problem in one respect, and I believe one respect only. You know, when the country gives you an assignment with a very specific mandate, in our case, is to educate Kenyans, to reconcile Kenyans, and to basically propose the way that we can get united and work as a people. That is the mandate. The other mandate is to deal decisively with those who would divide us, because the law also gives us that power. Now, in the event that we are either unwilling or unable to do that, then we become the problem. Now, in this situation,
all right,
neither us, the NCIC, National Cohesion and Integration Commission, nor the law enforcement agencies are unwilling or unable. We, like our chairman is saying, we intend to execute this mandate without fear or favor.
All right.
And we will do it because we have been given that trust.
All right.
That trust must be upheld for the people of Kenya.
Prof, such incitement coming from elected leaders, we have seen student body elections in public universities, taking that tribal route. What does such utterances from elected leaders do to students?
They set a very bad example when people who are supposed to be respected engage in unbecoming behavior. And then they wonder why the children are doing the same. It just shows a lack of foresight on these people. One of the things that can be done, if it were possible, anyone who aspires to be elected governor or any major public office, maybe they should go to school on how to behave. They should go to school and be inculcated with national values, a sense of national values, national interests, because it clearly is not in Kenya's interest to have a governor or a politician, an MP,
right,
or a senator storming buildings when they are the ones who should know better, because they should say, okay, we may not be happy with this. They know where the minister is.
Right.
They have access to the minister. Could go and ask questions, discuss things. So they need to go to be taken to school before they take office.
Does this affect the quality of graduates that are coming out of public universities?
Yes, it does. Once people see that sort of behavior, the students may even think that studying is not important, because if these are the governors, these are the people leading the country, and they do not show sense of decency in the public arena, some of them may think that that's the way things are. So they may even start questioning whether they should do their homework.
Right.
Whether they, in fact, I've heard some people saying, you go to a university, and before you enter, you are told very clearly, you are required to do the following before you graduate. And then they start saying, why should we do that? Say, why did you go to that university? This kind of thing comes, and from this kind of behavior, it's reinforced by this thing. The other time we saw high school students burning buildings. Why? Part of it because they saw the leaders behaving that way. So it is a very disturbing development that people we should respect and people who should have self-respect would engage in such behavior.
All right. Prof, as we wind up, this happened in the county of Uasin Gishu, where Moi University is located, a region that bore the brunt of the 2007-2008 post-election violence. When you see this happening, this becomes a very specific problem. The NCIC has been accused of being a toothless dog in as far as having a very wide mandate. But this is a very specific problem. Is there a way, or will the Commission find a way of punishing counties and universities who would, make those institutions tribal specifically?
Actually, we have proposed as a commission that even the money that the counties get begin to be tied to the extent to which they are upholding diversity. And that means we will have to deal with the commission that deals with the revenue allocation.
Right.
We are also saying that all the institutions, the national ones, they can be held accountable directly by the executive because they fall directly there to the executive. It's the counties where the law needs an adjustment so that we will be able to hold them accountable. So we are working on a very wide area, and we have really done a lot, believing in that area and making sure that the devolution does not become a threat to national unity. But there are certain things that we actually did not think about, because even when we go to the front, which we do, it's very hard to find these governors in the offices. They are all in Nairobi. So even if those Kenyans who walk around saying we need to remove provincial administration, maybe they need to join us in this in our front trips, because we go to the counties. These people are always in Nairobi. The majority of them are never in their counties. And therefore, like Professor was saying here about their training, you wonder where they went through, because one of the things is fidelity also to duty. When you have on duty, you execute it with everything that you have, with all the power that you have been given. It looks like even that, for them, is becoming a very problem. So there is a risk here we are running, but again, this is a 5-year experiment so far.
Right.
And I believe Linda's will emerge that we will try to fix this, not just for national universities, but also for the way we are running the counties.
Right.
Because clearly, it's the way we are running them is a threat to our unity, is a threat to our cohesion.
Thank you. In a nutshell, Prof, what is the solution to this problem?
Attitude change across the board, from the top leadership, from the children, and which means that the education system and philosophy needs to be overhauled, such that we inculcate, we internalize citizens' values, such that people can think seriously for the betterment of the country and not for parochial things.
Right.
So we need a serious attitude change, even in our politics.
Thank you. Professor Kitile Naitule, Commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, and Professor Macharia Monene, a lecturer at the United States International University here in Nairobi. Many thanks for joining us. We have been talking about the issue or the problem of ethnicization of public institutions of higher learning. Many thanks for staying with us here on Checkpoint. We are taking another quick commercial break. Don't go